Hi, Sarah. Okay, so the answer to your situation is remarkably easy. Doesn't involve any Visual Basic code at all. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to show you what I came up with and how I did it. Okay, and what I want to point out to you, I took this form here, your form, a copy of your form from the database that you posted, and I took and I had these two fields. I used these two fields, I guess, because you had them already here. Okay. But you had client ID and client name. So okay, so I'm going to step back. What I want to point out to you is that I have client ID, and here I have a text box. And then here, down here, I have client, like the client name, and then right here, I have a drop-down list, okay? Now notice this drop-down list. Does this look familiar to you? You've got a list of names, okay? And watch what happens when I pick a name, okay? I picked a name and it updated here, okay? I'll pick another name and it updated here, okay? So I'm going to show you what I did to make it so that you can have that without you having to do any Visual Basic code, okay? So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to go into Design View, okay? And first I'm going to go here to the text box, okay? And I'm going to come over here to All, and we'll notice the name, the control source is client ID, okay? That means that the information that is stored in the field client ID in the table for your project is what will be showing here, okay? So again, this field right here is one of the fields in the table for your project. I guess I should back up a little bit here for just a moment and tell you that I changed your source of your data for your entire form, and I took out that extra table and I just did your project information, okay, just so you know. You don't need that other table. Anyway, okay, so when you have the query enter new project, that only includes the project data, not any of the client information. You don't need that. Okay, so when I refer to this client ID is the client ID that's stored in the project information or table, however you called it. I'm not sure. What'd you call it? Oh, TBL project information. Okay. So anyway, so there's a difference between the control source and the name, okay? And the name here is actually client ID 2, okay? And the reason for that is because if I come down here, I also have another, this combo box here has a control source of client ID, and its name is client ID. Well, you can't have two items on the form that are named the same thing. All the names on a form have to be unique. So the name here for this text box is different than the name for this um, drop down or combo box. Okay. But you will notice that once again, the control source or where the data is coming from is client ID. Okay. So that when something is typed in, it's stored in there, and then when the user pulls up that record, that information is showing. Okay, I want to make sure I'm clear on that. Okay, so what I want to explain to you is about this text, this combo box. Okay, and so if I go here and what I did was I changed your row source type to table/query, and I went here and I built a query. Okay, and all I did was I brought down all the data. Okay, and then I also brought down client name and put ascending, and notice the show box is not marked. So when I run this query, then this is what I have for data. Okay, and you'll notice that the client ID is here and the client name is here, which looks familiar to you, I'm sure. Okay, so when we're talking about bound column 1, okay, it's bound to column 1. Well, the column 1 is client ID, right? Okay. And limit to list is yes. You've got that. Okay. So we'll go over here, and what I did was I said column count 2, and I said the column widths are 0, semicolon 3 inches. Okay. So what's going to happen is that when the user clicks on this down arrow, okay, they're going to see a list of client names, and when they click on the client name, it's going to show that client name here, but actually it's going to store the client ID. So that's what happens when you have a 0 here and some measurement here for the column widths. Okay, and so the list width, I change it from auto to 3 inches. Okay, so once again, if I go here, again, notice that I'm going to click on a client name, but what's actually being stored in this field is the client ID. Okay, so because what's being stored in this client ID here is the actual client ID for this particular client name, that value is being reflected here as well, because this value is actually the same value as this value. I hope that makes sense. Because remember, 004 is actually what's being chosen in this list. So I chose Mason Construction, and whatever is mapped to Mason Construction is what I'll be picking. And because this guy and this guy are both client ID, then the client ID is going to show up here as well. Okay, so I went over that, and hopefully that makes sense.